All right. Good morning and welcome to Managing Devices at Microsoft IT using System Center 2012 SP1 Configuration Manager and Intune. Essentially, we're going to share our experiences with unified device management at Microsoft IT. My name is Arun Ramakrishnan. I'm a service engineer with Windows Server and System Center. So I essentially run the platform or the infrastructure that runs the config manager infrastructure that supports all of Microsoft IT's Workstation OU clients. And we've been involved in dogfooding the different versions of SP1, System Center SP1, throughout its life cycle at Microsoft IT. And with me, I have Karthik Jaivel.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karthik Jaivel. I'm service engineer in Windows Server and System Center group. I work with Arun, and I work from the service delivery side for unified device management, for enrollment, app distribution, and settings management.
Friendly reminder to everyone, this content is confidential, so please do not post it on Facebook or Twitter or any other personal internet exposed media. And a couple of other friendly requests is we'll take questions at the end of the presentation just so that we can get through all our content. And if you have any questions, please come up to the mic and ask them so that folks who are going to watch this eventually on my TechReady TV will be able to hear the question as well. So our objective and takeaways, so like I said during the intro, is our objective is to share our story, share what we did at Microsoft IT for the unified device management story, and show how we were able to leverage our existing config manager infrastructure with Intune and do the end-to-end device management of modern devices. And we've all heard a lot about some of these catchphrases that are being thrown around, like consumerization of IT, bring your own devices. And we're going to share our story on how what were our experiences trying to run that at Microsoft IT, and also provide a better understanding of how we were able to exist, what advantages this unified device management gives you in being able to extend your existing config manager infrastructure into the cloud. So who's this session designed for? Folks who have a basic understanding of System Center 2012 Config Manager and Intune. So we're going to show some demos during this presentation, and we're going to walk through the Config Manager console through most of them, so familiarity would really help you. And also folks who are interested in actually walking through the steps, understanding what are the steps A, B, C to set up a connector from between Config Manager and Intune, and for distributing applications and policies, and also being able to report on devices that are accessing, that are now being managed through the unified device management, so that you can report on what are these devices that are accessing my corporate resources. Our overview, the solution overview at Microsoft IT. So we had the Config Manager 2012 RTM, we had some device management challenges. One of the first ones was, you had to in order to extend your config manager infrastructure to do device management, you had to build a couple of additional roles. You needed like an enrollment point, you needed an enrollment point proxy, you need to have complex networking designs, like where you need to have a DMZ setup where you would have your host or proxy point, and you would have to work with your networking team to get ACLs provisioned. And being an infrastructure engineer, it's been a pain point for me personally when we try to do it. Trying to work with the data center teams, trying to get all the requests through, trying to get the security reviews through, and making sure that all the requisite protocols are allowed to communicate back and forth between the corp and the DMZ. It's a big challenge, and also, from the LOB application perspective, there wasn't really much of a story. There wasn't really a lot of LOB applications being offered for modern devices through Config Manager. There's no mean to safeguard. There's no mean to enforce policies on these devices that you could that would really secure the data, your corporate data on these personal devices. And there was, if you consider the main reason behind consumerization of IT is More and more, the IT users are going out buying their latest devices. They're buying the latest iPhones. They're getting the Windows Phone 8. At Microsoft, we have, we've had an explosion of the Windows Phone 8 and the Surface RT devices, and there wasn't really a good story. The end users want to be productive. Your end users want to be able to access your corporate resources and applications through their devices, even at home or in a coffee shop, wherever they are. But we had a limitation there. And with Unified Device Management through Config Manager 2012 SP1 and Windows Intune, we're able to achieve it now. Here you have native management for most modern devices, so whether it's your iOS, your Windows Phone 8, your WinRT devices, you can manage them. You're able to provide them with LOB applications, and you're even able to enforce policies on your end users. Like you're able to enforce PIN policies if required, and Karthik's going to share later during this presentation some of the policies we enforced during our pilot at Microsoft IT. And you're able to secure your apps and your data. You're also able to enable now your end users, they can connect from, they're able to connect through their 3G connection, they're able to connect it from home, they don't have to go through any additional VPN process to be able to access the resources. They just type in their email ID and password, and they have access. They're able to install these applications over the internet or through their 3G connection at home. And from a platform engineer position, my biggest relief is I don't have to go through that additional infrastructure design now. I don't have to work with data center teams to try and get holes punched through ACLs between the DMZ and the corp. I essentially can extend my existing config manager infrastructure into the cloud, and I'm able to leverage that cloud resources to manage these modern devices. So let's look a little more in depth into what we did specifically at Microsoft IT. So this was our pilot effort at Microsoft, where we decided we're going to do a small pilot for 5,000 devices, and we decided to do it with a separate infrastructure than our main hierarchy, just from a learning aspect perspective, so that we could dog food at this particular site and kind of take those learnings and apply them when we are going to expand it to our main hierarchy. So we built a small standalone config manager hierarchy, which had the site was entirely virtual. We had a primary site with 12 gigs of RAM, 4 procs, and a remote SQL server with 24 gigs of RAM and 4 procs. And we were going to hook it up to the Windows Intune beta environment because that was, when we were doing the actual dog food, that was the only environment that had been updated to Wave-D at that point in time, so it gave us greater exposure into the new features that are laid up through Unified Device Management. So we performed a complete user discovery of all corporate domains at this particular site. So if you're familiar with the Microsoft AD structure, the Redmond, Far East, we essentially discovered all the domains in order to have that ability, if needed, to have users from disparate groups to be able to enroll their devices. We worked with the MSODS, or the Microsoft Online Directory Services team, to provision the Microsoft IT tenant in Intune beta. And for those not familiar with how the online directory services work, essentially it's your ability to extend your on-premise AD infrastructure into the cloud. And you essentially run, so if you were a new customer trying to set it up and you had ADFS configured and you had a publicly recognized domain, you would run the directory sync tool so that it synced your Active Directory data with what's present in the cloud. And through ADFS, it essentially gives the ability to have single sign-on for your users. When your users are trying to access certain cloud resources or cloud devices, or even enroll their devices for Config Manager or for the Unified Device Management, they don't have to enter any proxy information or server information. They can just go in and type in their user ID and their email ID and password, and they're in. And our next step was setting up the Intune subscription and the connector role between the Config Manager primary site and between the, so that we could hook it up to the Windows Intune beta environment. And one other step we did was we set up a redirection, a DNS redirection for enterprise enrollment.microsoft.com, so that it got redirected to the Intune beta environment. Karthik is going to show you a demo later on where he's going to actually enroll some devices, which will make this aspect a lot clearer. But in order to just give a high-level overview of why this was a required step was, when a user enrolls their device, they provide their user principal name or UPN, which is typically same as their email address. So I'm Arun. I would come in and say arun@microsoft.com. This is my password. What it does during the company app does is it essentially strips out the portion and says, so okay, so since you're arun@microsoft.com, you need to go to enterpriseenrollment.microsoft.com. So if I was arun@contoso.com, it'd be enterpriseenrollment.contoso.com, and that would say, and you would have to create a DNS redirection so that it goes to the required Intune environment. From a device perspective, some of the prerequisites for the devices that we had to enable was we had to get a Windows Phone 8 code signing certificate. This has to be a VeriSign cert. We worked with the app team to get this code signing certificate, and we worked with the app team again to get the Windows RT code signing certificate and the side loading keys. And for the side loading keys, you essentially have to work with the volume licensing team in order to get the side loading key. And for the iOS devices, you need an Apple push notification certificate. You would have to go through the Apple portal to request this particular certificate. And the console itself will show during the demo. There's a section in the console where you can actually generate the request for the certificate, and later on you would go into the portal and submit this request to get the certificate. So let's do a quick demo of a basic enrollment. So we have a standalone primary site here. This is a custom domain. It's not hooked up to our corporate environment. And one of the key things that you have to do from where you set up the connector, the Windows Intune connector role always is set up at the topmost node in your hierarchy. So in this case, since we have a flat hierarchy, it would happen on the primary side. If we had a multi-tier hierarchy, it would happen on the central administrative side. One other prerequisite for the Windows Phone 8 specifically is the self-service portal. You need to create an app deployment for the self-service portal, and this self-service portal needs to be signed with the certificate, the code signing certificate that you acquire. And you can get this particular the SSP. You can actually download this from the download center. Right. So in order to set up the connector, you go into the administration tab and click on Windows Intune subscription. Before I go into actually kicking off the creation of the subscription, I just wanted to go over the creation of the APN certificate request. So you have, as you see, you have a button over here. You would click that, and when you click on the Browse button, it will prompt you for your Intune credentials in order to perform some validation. Once you provide your, which would typically be in most cases the same as your corporate information, whatever service admin credentials you have to log into Intune, it will be the same information over here. So once you provide that, then it would give you the path to download the request file, and you can provide a local path for it to download the request file. And the link that you see in step 1 over here, that's essentially what you would click to go into the Apple portal. You will need an Apple account in order to do this. So you would sign in through your Apple account and you would upload this request, and which will in turn give you the certificate that's a prerequisite for you. So let's create the Intune subscription. Let's move this so folks can see it better. So first up is we're going to sign in to our Intune account, and we're using the service admin account over here. One key item is this checkbox is essentially not optional. So if you select this checkbox, you're essentially saying, now config manager is going to be the authority for managing your modern devices over Intune. From a user collection perspective, and Karthik will go over, and I will go over this as well a little bit later on, is this is the user collection you want to limit to be able to enroll or to be licensed in Intune to be able to enroll their modern devices. In our case, this is a really small domain, test domain, so we're just going to select the all users group. The company name. The URL to the privacy documentation, that's of course again a company specific item that if you had, like if your particular organization had one that you wanted to specify the URL for, you can specify it here, but this is not a mandatory step, so we're going to skip it. The config manager site code, this will be the primary site code that you want all the devices to be assigned to. In our case, even though you're setting up the Intune subscription role, in this particular step, you're providing a primary site code. So in our case, it's a flat hierarchy right now, so it's no different from, I only have one primary site, so I'm providing one site code. But if I had a multi-tier hierarchy, in this particular step, I would actually provide the site code of the primary site I wanted the device to be assigned to. So for the platforms, we're going to skip Android for now, and we'll actually talk more about that later in the presentation as well as why we're skipping Android. Huh? BlackBerry? There's no support for BlackBerry. You don't have it? Not in the unified device. It's not an option, you're saying? It's not an option. And for folks on the phone, just a quick recap. Question was, is there an option to select BlackBerry? And the answer is no, not through Unified Device Management. So this step, I'm essentially selecting the code signing certificate for Windows RT. And the side loading keys, I think we talked about it earlier that you needed the side loading keys as a prerequisite for Windows RT devices. You can enter it at this step, or you can choose to enter it at the other. I'll share the location again where there's another point where you can add the side loading key. I'm going to skip this step for now because we already have it entered in a different location. This is not going to stop the wizard at this point in time. You can actually move on, and you can go back and add the side loading key. The next step is for the Windows Phone 8 device. I'm adding the code signing certificate. And since it's a PFX file, it requires a password. Right? And the company portal app, which was the other prerequisite that we talked about, that you have to create an app deployment for the company portal. And so so since we already pre-created that, I would just point this to the existing company portal app. And the next step for the iOS, we already I showed you how to generate the request. We already had this pre-downloaded from the Apple website, so we have the Apple push notification certificate. While we wait for the wizard to complete, there's going to be one additional step here that we'll go into next, is where you need to set up the Windows Intune connector role. This would again be on the topmost node in your hierarchy. So flat hierarchy, it's going to go on this side, but if I had a multi-tier hierarchy, it's going to go on the central administrative side. So you would use the add side system role wizard as always. And you select the Windows Intune connector role. Now, in order to monitor the progress of this, you have a new log called cloud-user-sync.log, which you can essentially monitor to check the progress of your the cloud user sync between your config manager site and Intune. This step is what essentially validates and ensures that your client, like what are the users who are licensed to use unified device management or enroll devices for unified device management in your environment. You will also get warnings for users that couldn't be. You can go through this log for, like, if there are certain users. We've had issues where you have a user principal name is missing an Active Directory, or a user principal name is duplicate that can cause some issues. And Karthik is going to cover that later on in some of the lessons learned that we had during our experience. So let's go back to the presentation. So from an infrastructure perspective, we had some lessons learned. Obviously, we didn't give this as beefy, a beefy amount of resources as we would give for, say, our production infrastructure. As it was a pilot effort, we had it limited to about 5,000 users, and we were kind of using it as a learning experience to understand what should our infrastructure investment be. And we had some scale issues in this particular infrastructure because our site wasn't able to keep up with like the 5,000 user limit for cloud user sync. And from a platform admin where you're trying to manage the uptime of your environment, you're trying to monitor what components should I look at. There's 3 additional components that you need to monitor. There's the DMP uploader, the DMP downloader, and the cloud user sync that we just looked at. And there are logs for each of these particular components that you would have to, you can review for troubleshooting purposes. And a recap and some of what we say kind of lessons learned and things that we fine-tuned along the process when we were going through the pilot was we discovered users from all forests, obviously, but since Microsoft AD is really big, we have thousands and thousands, I think we have close to 300,000 users in there. So we set up a Delta user discovery and fast collections. And for the cloud user sync, because of the infrastructure scale issue that I referred to, we essentially scale back the sync frequency between the config manager site and Intune from 5 minutes to 60 minutes. And for our pilot, since we were going to limit it for a size of just 5,000 users, we limited it to a collection for just 5,000 FTEs. And kind of the driving factor in this was also around the time we were doing the pilot, Windows Phone 8 and Windows RT had just released into the market. A lot of employees were getting them. So kind of from driving our user-based perspective, that was also a conscious decision. And we developed a custom report in order to report on the user licensing status to ensure that now I have this user collection. These are the list of users that I want to be licensed to enroll their devices. But are they actually licensed? So we developed a custom report, and Karthik is going to share that later in the presentation on what this custom report gives us is, being able to tell off the cuff, what percentage of my users that I want to be licensed are actually going to be able to enroll their devices. With this, I hand off to Karthik to talk about device enrollment and company portal.
Thanks, Arun. Now that we know what are the prerequisites and how to for infrastructure, as well as how to set up the connector subscription in Config Manager, we're going to talk about what else we did for device enrollment and company portal. Before we dive into this, I would like to explain what was our device scope for this pilot. Apart from the regular Windows 8 PCs, our primary focus was on WinRT devices and Windows Phone 8. We wanted to try other devices, heterogeneous devices like iOS and Android, but we had some challenges at the time. Because due to the sudden high volume of WinRT devices as well as Windows Phone 8, there was a lot of interest on the user community too to try these devices. As well as we didn't get many apps, LLOB apps for iOS platform, and pretty much we didn't get any LLOB app for Android. Due to these reasons, we had to test minimally on the iOS platform, Apple, iPad, and iPhone devices. And we thought that we would take Android as out of scope for this pilot. Just to give an overview on the count of devices that got enrolled and the amount of apps that we published, we got around 140 Windows Phone 8 devices enrolled and around 35 WinRT devices enrolled. But we are planning to see like 24,000 Windows Phone 8 and 19K WinRT devices. We see this count from our Exchange connector data sync. We see all these users are trying to connect to CorpNet email exchange. So we are expecting these users will volunteer for this user enrollment when we go abroad. We had 9 Windows Phone 8 LLOB apps published and 12 WinRT apps. We also deep linked few apps into MS Store, 1 WinPhone app and 2 deep linked apps. You may wonder how come WinRT apps are higher compared to Windows Phone 8, though the architecture is new. We have a question, or we have an answer for that in coming slides. Okay, let's see what did we do. What was our goal for Windows Phone 8 enrollment? As of, with any device management, the primary focus was on the user experience. We didn't want user to remember a different credential, or apart from the corp credentials, or a common user ID and password that would dilute the interest in users for enrolling their device. So we wanted to use the corp credential and also the less user intervention as much as possible, because when you try to enroll, users will not be able to remember the server name or the URL or kind of a domain name to do the enrollment. Last, we wanted to have the seamless and silent company portal installation during the enrollment time. Let's see how we achieved these objectives. As part of the product itself, there are some, the product itself come up with some features which helped us to achieve these goals. First of all, the user enrollment is based on user principal name. In Microsoft IT, the user principal name is your alias at Microsoft.com. It depends. Sometimes, very rarely, we got different UPN, like your first name dot last name. Those were also the challenges we faced, but most of the times, it's the alias at Microsoft.com. And as Arun mentioned, we changed the enrollment URL, DNS redirection, to the beta environment. So users don't have to remember any kind of a URL at the time of enrollment. And we deployed company portal as an application in the config manager. We signed it and configured that in config manager, and then provided that in the Intune subscription settings. During my talk, I'll be referring to subscription quite a few times. Please remember, whenever I say subscription, it's the subscription settings that Arun mentioned in his demo. Okay. So after the enrollment is done, the client will try to talk to the server 5 times in first 15 minutes. At that time, it tries to get all the policies that are assigned to the device. So during that time, the policies like the password policy and encryption policies that we applied on config manager got into the device, so the users were able to see if there is any policy or a password enforcement that we did. During that time, the hardware inventory will also get back to the server. In case if the device loses the connectivity or the internet connection is gone, the next cycle will happen after 8 hours. So we had to set the expectation with our customers and stakeholders to make sure if the inventory is not coming up, we have to wait for a certain time. Okay. So let's see what we did for Windows Phone 8 company portal specifically. Before we kick-started the project, we worked with the Windows 8 app team extensively. We had a series of conversations to try to find out what are all the apps they want to publish. And also we defined the signing process, which team to sign and how to get those published in. Once we formalized this process, we got all apps signed, including the company portal, before we publish into the config manager. There are certain standards in Microsoft IT to categorize apps in certain folders. We followed the standards and then categorized all the apps in config manager. The config manager product itself will let you to categorize the apps. And after we categorized those apps and then configured that in the config manager, we deployed this into the same Cloud Sync collection that Arun mentioned in the subscription page. And all these apps were deployed as available apps, so that users will, for all users, all the modern apps generally go to our user collection. So we use the Cloud Sync user collection and make it as available, so they will show in the SS, or the company portal. And we also had one specific requirement from our app team to deploy one particular app to only few users. So only those users should be able to see those see that particular app in the company portal. We achieved this by creating a security group, adding those users into the security group, and discover that security group and create a collection, user-based collection, and publish that particular app to that collection. So only those users will be able to see that app, and rest of the users will not be able to see that app. Okay. With that, we are going to get into a small demo of the enrollment and the company portal. This is going to be from our test environment that Arun showed. Okay, this is a Windows Phone emulator. Before we start, let me just confirm that I have the internet connection, because it has to go through internet and talk to Intune server to get the enrollment going on. Okay. So the actual enrollment setting is under Settings, under Company Apps. And you can click on Add Account. And in Microsoft IT, the user email address is your alias at microsoft.com. And here I'm going to use a test account.
So in this particular presentation, because we didn't have a lot of iOS coverage, essentially because there were not, like Karthik mentioned, right, we didn't have a lot of LOB apps, so we didn't have a lot of volunteers for iOS, and we had next to no apps for Android, LOB apps for Android devices. So there's no real volunteer. So we're kind of really, I understand where you're coming from, but we're essentially just conveying what our experience is. We did do some test. We did some limited amount of enrollment and testing on iOS devices, but because the extent of coverage at Microsoft IT, or at least folks who enroll during our pilot time for iOS, was very handful. I think whatever we did were essentially test devices for iOS. Yes.
Sure.
Sure.
We have the future plans. We are going to talk about the future plans too very soon. And there are also other sessions that can cover more on the other heterogeneous devices too.
Okay.
Okay. No problem. Okay. And this is the URL that we talked about. In production, or when in Microsoft IT, users will not be able to, or should not be able to enter this settings, because the redirection will automatically take them to the beta Intune environment. But here I'm going to, since it's a test environment, I have to give a server name. Okay. Right now, it's trying to reach the Intune server and talk to the enrollment server and get the certificate downloaded, installed, as well as the company portal. As you could see, since we already tied up the enrollment with the company portal in the subscription page, it automatically downloads the company apps and then installs it at the time of the enrollment at the back end. So once the user clicks on done, go back to company portal, you could see the company portal already installed at the back end. It's part of Visual Studio SDK. Visual Studio SDK.
The question was, where can you find this emulator? And it's a part of the Visual Studio SDK.
It's a one-time process to enter the password initially to go through the authentication process. Since the internet connection is slow. Okay, so this is how the company portal looks like. As you could see, we have categorized our apps into multiple folders, like campus life and productivity tools. Similarly, we have like a couple of other categories too. So if I go to all, I could see all the apps installed here, and then select any of the app and read the description, and then click on install. It will ask you to accept the certificate with the code signing certificate that you signed up with. And once the app is installed, you could see MSGive already installed at the back end. And during that time, it will also send the status to the server and then report the status of the app, whether it is installed or failed or any status on this. We're going to talk about the reports and everything very soon. Okay. Right, with that, we'll move back to the presentation. Okay. So we have a couple of lessons learned on Windows Phone 8. As Arun mentioned, UPN is the key for user enrollment. We found that there are some duplicate UPNs already available within Microsoft IT. If a user is part of two different domains, then the alias will be same, say like Redmond in Europe. Alias, the UPN will be same, but their actual, the account will be in both places, Redmond and Europe. So due to this conflict, the cloud user sync failed. So we had to remove these duplicate UPNs into a collection and exclude that collection in the cloud sync so that the rest of the user sync will go smoothly. And due to the config manager hardware limit during our pilot time, licensing over 5,000 had some scalability issue on the config manager side. And we are beefing up our server hierarchy for the production when we go broader. And one thing to notice here is, with the regular clients, you will be able to connect to the device, look at the logs, and then see what is the problem going on and troubleshoot the problem and take some action. But since devices are personal, as well as they're not easily accessible, and logs are not there in Windows Phone 8 devices, so the troubleshooting piece becomes a little tougher on the device side. But on the server side, you could see the logs on the CM side and look at the status of the enrollment as well as your app distribution. So as with any new technology, there will be a lot of questions coming from the user side, how to enroll the devices, how to install apps. So we too got a lot of questions from the user side, and there are a lot of commonly asked questions too. So what we did is we created a FAQ document and then answered all those questions in the document. If there are some bugs or issues or anything, that we documented that and shared across so the users can readily get their answers through the document. And on the company portal, couple of things to note down there is the code signing certificate has to be a Verizon certificate. It is the limitation on the platform, not on the product side, on the phone device side. So you may have to go through Symantec and get your certificate, code signing certificate ready, or work with your app provisioning team to get your code signing certificate before you do the subscription setting in Config Manager. Though there are no logs for enrollment, there is a way to collect logs for company portal. In company portal itself, there is a provision to send logs through email. So when we had issues for company portal connectivity or failures, we were able to collect logs from the company portal and send it through email from the device itself. And one other thing to notice is if you miss to install a company portal or uncheck the box during the enrollment time in the device, or if you specifically go and uninstall the company portal after the enrollment, there is no way to go and get it on demand. So you have to do the re-enrollment because the enrollment as well as the company portal are totally tied up together. And it has to be signed with the same certificate. So if the user suddenly feels like they want to get opt-out from the service and just uninstalls the company portal and changes his mind, he has to go through the enrollment process again. Okay. Right. Let's talk about Winarty enrollment. The Winarty enrollment process is pretty much same. The user experience is pretty much same as Windows Phone 8. And no need to provide separate license for Winarty devices. All licensing are based on user model. So if you license a user, it will automatically give the licensing for all the devices. So no need to go an extra step for Winarty. And experience for enrollment is same. Company portal, during the beta time frame, we had to sideload the company portal for Winarty devices. But right now, you can go to MS Store, directly download the company portal for Winarty devices, and install it on demand anytime. Okay. And whenever you enroll or users enroll their devices, it automatically takes the sideloading key and enrolled on the device. So sideloading key is when you go and purchase the volume licensing sideloading key, that one key will be used during the enrollment time. Okay. And let's see how we did the company portal app publishing and all company app portal itself. How did we install and as well as how did we publish the apps? If you remember, I told that there are a lot of, compared to Windows Phone 8 apps, we got many Winarty apps. The reason behind that is our app provisioning team built apps for Windows 8 desktop, the modern apps, and they made it available for all architecture. Since Windows RT device is also one of the architecture, we could easily get this Windows 8 apps get installed on WinRT. So if your app provisioning team can make the apps available for all architecture, even WinRT apps will be automatically covered in that. Regarding the certificate, there was a challenge during the time of our pilot time. If you remember, Arun punched in the code signing certificate for WinRT. For Windows Phone 8, it's a very recent certificate. For WinRT, we signed all these apps through our Microsoft root CA certificate. So we use that root CA certificate and then subscribe that in the Intune subscription page. So any app that got signed with that certificate or any child certificate automatically got trusted. So we just use the root certificate to publish into the devices. As I told before, we also deep link few apps in the MS Store, and those are commonly used apps to make sure how the adoption goes on for those deep linked apps. Okay. Let's see a demo on the Winarty enrollment and company portal. You can search for company apps in Winarty device, and which will take you to a screen which is pretty much similar to Windows Phone 8 enrollment screen. Here, I'm going to give my alias or my UPN. Yeah. Here, it asks for the more information similar to Windows Phone 8. This pop-up didn't appear when the users actually enroll their devices in Microsoft IT because of the redirection. Okay, so again, it's trying to go and talk to the Intune server and get the enrollment going on at the back end. Okay, while it's going on, I can explain the next step. Once the enrollment is done, there will be a link in the same screen to take you, which will take you to the MS Store to download the company portal and install it. And once that is installed, you can log into the company portal, use your regular domain credentials. It will automatically show all the apps that are published in there, as well as it will show all the devices that are already enrolled under your name. It's taking too long. Yeah, it's connected. Yeah. Okay. So now this device is enrolled, and as you can see, you can go use this link, which will take you to the store, MS Store, to download the company portal, which opens in IE though, but once you click on it, it will automatically take you to the store. Or you can directly go to the store and search for company portal. If you search for company portal, you will get the result, and then you can install it from here. This is the screen, how it's going to look like on the right side. You can see that. Once we log in, we'll show what are the apps that we publish to. Okay, so go back here. Spending. Okay. So a couple of things to note on the company portal. It's not only for apps, it's for your devices too. You can rename your device. You can remove your device, not only this particular device, any devices that you enroll, Windows Phone 8, any other Windows Phone 8 device, or your iOS or Android devices will be shown in there, because it uses your user ID and see what are all the devices that comes under your name. And we have a lessons learned also in that. When you do a removal in the company portal, what happens at the back end. Okay. We'll come back to the portal because I have another demo. At that time, I will open up the portal and explain what are the things that we published. Okay. Right. Now, there are quite a few lessons learned on Windows RT because it's a new architecture, new platform. So every time when you re-enroll, if a user wants to unenroll and then re-enroll, it uses one side loading key automatically. So you may want to remember that. Also, if the user initiates the enrollment on the device side, like when on the device side goes and then unenrolls or remove the device, not remove it, unenroll, it doesn't remove the company portal and the apps associated to the device. Because you can still log into a company portal to manage other devices. That's the primary reason to keep the company portal. As well as there are no logs on the client side. On Windows Phone 8, at least you'll be having the logs for the company portal. For company portal in Windows RT, there are no logs, so it becomes sometimes tough to really troubleshoot the actual problem. Okay. The portal experience is kind of different from Windows Phone 8 to Windows RT because there are new things in Windows RT portal like devices, renaming the devices, and then the experience itself is different. So we had a couple of questions on that too from the user side. Then we had to explain that, and then sometimes you may get some support calls too on that. How is it different, and what happens if we click on that? So those kind of calls are expected when we go for a new technology. And as I explained on Windows Phone 8, the policy refresh happens once in 8 hours, but in WinRT, it runs only at the maintenance mode once in 24 hours. So if the device misses some kind of a refresh, then it has to wait for the 24 hours time frame. So you may want to set the expectation on that side to when there is a sudden change on the server side, when it's going to get refreshed on the client side. Settings management, what are all the policies that we applied on the settings management? We are going to cover that in this session and how we applied it. As someone asked, is there any kind of an encryption is covered on that? Yes, the device encryption is allowed in Windows Phone 8, but not allowed in WinRT. So that's why we applied that encryption on the Windows Phone 8 side. These are all the policies on the right side that we applied. Let me talk about more on how we define these policies. First, we worked with the Exchange team because most of these policies are also applied by Exchange when you connect your device to Exchange. So we wanted to make sure the user experience is seamless as well as consistent across CA, Config Manager, as well as Exchange. So we worked with our Exchange team as well as our security team because some of these policies come from our security team because they want to enforce certain settings on the devices. So we worked extensively with these two teams and then define the actual settings and then try to find out what are the settings in that are supported by Config Manager and Intune, and then applied those. And how we applied, once the device gets enrolled, it tries to register the device into the Config Manager with an additional column called Agent Edition. This is new in Service Pack 1. So you can see enrolled devices very clearly using this Agent Edition. If the Agent Edition equals 1, then it means it's a WinRT device. If it's 4, it means it's a Windows Phone 8 device. So we tabbed that information and created the collection to easily identify these devices. Also, we ensured those collections are enabled for fast collection. That's one of the lessons learned too, because if it takes 24 hours to make the collection evaluated, it takes a lot of time to get the policies, or it delays the entire process. And we created the password and encryption policies using the predefined settings management settings in CI. I'm going to show how these CIs look like, what are all the settings that we applied, and how we applied to. One key important aspect of that is we have to set up the remediation in the CA as well as the baseline. If we don't set up the remediation in the settings management, the device will just report the compliance status and will not really will not enforce the settings. So we had to set up the remediation in both CA and baseline to enforce these settings. Okay. Right. We also covered the device retirement in our dogfooding effort. Apart from the regular validations that we did on retire, when we decommissioned our dogfooding environment, we bulk retired all our devices so that we can onboard them into the new production hierarchy when we go broader. When we did the retire, it automatically started the unenrollment process of the device, also deleted the device from the config manager to make it very clean. And since retire and wipe are very sensitive actions on the device side, we are working on defining a specific rollback access control role to give access to only few users in our team to have this action. So not anyone will have this. So you may want to consider using a separate RBAC role for these specific sensitive actions. Okay. I just want to touch base on how wipe and retire works, just to give an idea alone. So wipe on Windows Phone 8 will reset the device to factory default, and on WinRT, it's not supported. So it's not supported in the sense it's not going to make your device factory default. It will just remove your email access to CorpNet. And retire will unenroll the device from the Intune service as well as CM config manager service, and the company portal as well as the apps installed through company portal will be removed on Windows Phone 8 when you do the retire. But on a WinRT device, it just unenrolls the device, but the apps will still remain there, but they don't run because the sideloading key is already removed during the enrollment time. So after some time, they will get automatically purged out of it. Okay. We're going to talk about the reports and go and show all the settings management as well as the reports together in a demo quickly. Okay, there are a lot of out-of-box reports that came for unified device management in the product itself, but we had to create some extra custom reports to cover all the enrolled devices and the inventory they provide, just to cover the asset inventory of the enrolled devices. I will show that in the demo too. And if you want to know your app installation status on all the devices, a lot of reports available in Config Manager product itself that can help us. It's pretty much similar to app model reports. I'll show a couple of reports in the demo time. And all the policies enforced can be, the status of those policies can be easily seen from the settings management reports. With that, we'll see a demo on the reports as well as the settings management, how we configured the settings management. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay. As I mentioned in the presentation, we created the collections in a organized manner under folder called Unified Device Management for different device types. So for example, for the Windows Phone 8 devices, we used the Agent Edition 4 to identify the enrolled devices and use this collection for targeting our settings management. So just to quickly go over on the CI, these are the policies that we applied. That I showed in the table. Since these are already pre-built, I will just quickly run how to set these settings. Most of them are predefined and already pre-canned in the product, which will be really helpful to get these settings going. Create CI test. All you have to do is select the mobile device for the platform, and when you go here, select password, for example, and encryption. If you go to password, it will tell you all the predefined settings that are available. Say like what is the password length, and we use the password length 5 at the time. We are going to make it more aggressive to 4 or less aggressive to 4, basically. And then how much of the complexity we need to have on the password. All these Microsoft IT-based settings we configured here. Also, we enable the encryption for Windows Phone 8 devices and not for Windows NT. How did we segregate? How did we know that these settings are really applicable? That's very easily can be identified using the platform applicability. So in case if I select file encryption on, and if I go to program applicability, the product will automatically tell me what are all the platforms that are not applicable for these settings. So we created, based on this, we created the settings and then applied those settings on the right platform. So we created 2 different CIs and baselines for it. And as I told about the encryption, this is the remediate non-compliant settings. This has to be checked in CI and as well as in baseline. Let me explain that. So that's the CI creation process. And when we deployed this to the collection that we already created, we ensured this checkbox is also checked to do the remediation and enforce these settings. Without these 2 checkboxes, you will not be able to enforce these settings. Right. So that's how we configured the settings management and ensured all the machines are enforced with the policies. Let's look into the reports first. So reports can be viewed in 2 different places. One is in your SQL SSRS report or in your monitoring node in the config manager console itself. For example, for the apps that we deployed in our test environment, let's see this particular app, you could see when you click on the console itself under monitoring deployments, you could see all the apps and the deployments, and you can also see the success status of it. And if you want to really see the actual machine that got success, right-click on the deployment and go to the view status. You could see the machine details itself here. Similarly, even for the settings management, you could see all the the status of your policies too here. So like for WinRT policies, the settings management that we set. Apart from these displays, we can also check the status in the SSRS report. And let's Before I show the app report and the settings management report, let's see what are all the reports that are already there to see the enrolled devices. So there are reports that can tell you what are all the devices that are enrolled within using the Intune device management. So when you click on, when you go to device management folder and go to number of devices enrolled, you could see all the devices that are enrolled through Windows Intune. And if you want to really know how much of how many devices in this have used the side loading key, you can select the side loading key and then the collection name, say like this. You could see how many. Basically, you will be seeing the WinRT devices here, a number of WinRT devices that have used the side loading key in the total bunch of your license keys. Also, we created. There is one other report that can tell you the list of all the devices that are there in your environment, including Exchange connector active sync device. So it will be a very useful report to see all the data in one place about the mobile population. And any device that got already enrolled and also connected through Exchange will get merged automatically. So there won't be any duplicate here to see for the enrolled devices. And this is the custom report that we built to give this to our stakeholders, just to see what are the different types of inventory that are being collected by enrolled devices. For example, if I go to Windows Phone 8, and then it will tell me what are all the devices, and then what's the username, and also the enrollment time. And then if you go into each device, it will tell you the device information and device information on all other, just a replica of what you see in the console. Without logging into the console, users our stakeholders could easily see the type of information being collected from the device. Okay. And regarding the app deployments, we have out-of-box reports. This is an application monitoring basic report. So when you go here, select an application. I'm just going to select an application that we checked in the INS console monitoring. And click on the report. I could see number of machines that got successful, like here, success data. And it also gives you the graph of what are the devices that got successfully installed, how much is the percentage, and also if you want to really see the device level data of it, you can click on success and go to number of assets here. It will tell you what is the particular device that got this app installed. So you can drill down to that level and see the status. Similarly, for the settings management, if you go and select RT policies, you could see how many machines have really complained for this and how many got remediated, how many got really enforced with that policy. If you click on it, it will tell you the list of devices that got enforced by your password or encryption policies that you set up. Okay. So with that, let's switch back quickly to the WinRT portal, see if it's ready to show you the look and feel of WinRT portal. That's fine. Yep. Okay. So the portal is ready, and then just have to log in. It's kind of slow. The session timed out. Okay, sorry. All right, let's quickly see if we can. The internet connection is kind of slow, so we are not getting the connectivity so fast. Let's try this one more time.
just continue.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Due to the time crunch, we'll move on to the presentation, and then probably the end of the presentation, I could show this portal. Okay. With that, I'm going to invite Arun to talk about the best practices overall in this entire dog fooding project for all devices.
Can everybody hear me now? All right. So we obviously had, it was a new experience even for us, so we had some learnings, and here are some actions that we took based on those learnings that can possibly be applied to other scenarios as well. First one was it's a new experience for users enrolling devices, and the experience appears to differ from device to device, right? So because the Windows RT, as you saw from Karthik's demo, the Windows RT experience was different from the Windows Phone 8 experience. So we kind of addressed that. So when we were actually soliciting user enrollment, and we were targeting a certain set of users, trying to get them to enroll their devices, as part of that notification email itself, we had a pretty extensive, here's how steps 1 to 10 of how you enroll your device in order to leverage this service. There's also, because of the device differences, and it's a new paradigm shift even for users, and to be prepared to ensure that our help desk didn't get overwhelmed, we kind of trained them. We created support documentation or Primus articles for those who are familiar with how the Microsoft IT help desk works, and we created documentation that can be shared and trained. And we had a kind of a DL, a support DL going on during our pilot projects, just so that we could get some user feedback, understand what are some of the common issues that the users run into, and we generated a FAQ document based on that. So, and we expect that this document will feed in when we're going broader in the very near future. This document will definitely be the base template that we would work off of. Our hardware scale issues, we mentioned that we had cloud user sync issues because of our hardware, and kind of forecasting for how we're going to do this at Microsoft at a larger scale, how we're going to be able to support it for all the Microsoft employees, and expecting, kind of predicting that they're going to have more than one device enroll. We're planning for a dedicated primary site for device management in our larger hierarchy, and we're planning to have a much beefier, almost the hardware we're planning for this is going to be on par with what we do for our regular config manager sites, like the ones that manage the x86 devices. And Karthik shared, one of the challenges obviously is as a stakeholder, like our management or even our customer, in this case Microsoft IT, wants to know, okay, who is accessing my resources? What are the types of devices accessing corporate applications? So we're actually building a custom dashboard based on the config manager data, some of the data that Karthik showed, that these users can easily consume. So in review, our objective was to show how easy it is to extend your existing config manager infrastructure into the cloud, and how you can use this combination, this unified device management, to distribute applications to enable your end users to access LOB applications, and also enforce security policies. And we were hopefully from this you were able to take away how easy it is, that you don't have to, no longer the struggle to set up a different infrastructure in DMZ. You just have to set up the Intune connector and you're good to go. And now giving the tools for your security to ensure that you're able to keep your users productive. At the same time, you're able to enforce those security policies to keep your data protected, and also being able to report on all the custom reports that we shared and the reports that are out of box in the product itself, that will enable your security teams or you as an IT administrator to be able to report on, okay, what are the users, what are the devices trying to access my corporate applications. This is some of the related, there's actually quite a few presentations on this particular topic that we recommend that you can either, if they're not in person, then you can watch them through the TechReady portal. And that's the end. We do have one request that please fill out the survey form, and we will take questions now. One request is please come up to the microphone so we can get the questions recorded.
This is in regard to the numbers of scalability. So you got 400,000 in a hierarchy. If you add another primary site, is that going to add to your numbers, subtract your numbers?
So the question is if you're adding another primary site. So we're not going to add it to the existing hierarchy. We're going to add it to like our larger production infrastructure.
Right.
And yes, it's going to add, we expect it to add to the numbers. Like the number of, you're asking about the number of
Supported number of
devices
clients.
enrolled stuff, right? Yes. We're expecting the number of devices enrolled to go up.
Are they separate outside of the 400,000 clients, though?
Yes.
Your mobile clients
It'll be the 300,000 clients that we support today, and then we'll have one for supporting the devices.
Okay. And then what numbers would you recommend going with your standalone primary? Seeing your hardware scale. Okay.
So for the question was, what is our recommendation for the hardware? That is to be determined. Like obviously we did a small pilot with virtual machines. Obviously we'll have to baseline the numbers and fine tune. So we don't have a recommendation right now.
Okay.
So to be clear, though, I have several large customers that are potentially looking to onboard this almost immediately. We're 10, 20, 30, 40,000 plus users, multiple potential devices. So Intune with ConfigMan for the MDM can scale out to cover this. Is your experience going to bear that out for Microsoft?
So the question is, there's a lot of users, there's a lot of customers trying to onboard this, and is our experience, so I didn't completely get.
Do you think that, you feel confident given the production code that's out there today for Intune and SP1 on ConfigMan that you can onboard tens of thousands of users?
So that is our plan. We're working towards that.
Okay, I just want to validate. So I don't want to go tell my customers, hey, come sign up, and have them pay me a bunch of money and then have engineering tell me I'm crazy.
So the question essentially is Microsoft IT going to implement this? And the answer to that is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, one of the questions I have is really support for multiple devices, like non-Microsoft. Are the capabilities that you've seen managing Microsoft devices going to be the same? Ported to non-Microsoft, are we going to be able to do encryption or file encryption, all these things to non-Microsoft devices, or it would be different type of management, based like what are we going to do related to iOS and Android from a management point of view?
Okay. iOS and Android can be managed through Intune as well as in Config Manager, but the experience is kind of different. We have to go through a web page to get your applications as well as your enrollment process, and that will automatically enroll your device. The experience could be different, but yes, they can be managed.
And the security?
And the encryption is possible for iOS, not for RT.
Not for?
RT.
So his question is on Android.
Android and iOS, yes.
Android and iOS,
Yes.
okay, would be that. Okay, so that's available. Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for joining us.